And my topic for the morning is the provision of firefighting water. Let me just check. Are we good? We're good. It is a complicated issue, and I don't want to make it more complicated than it is. So I'm not going to try to be technical, which mostly I'm not even able to be technical about it. So let me stay as simple as possible so that we have basic information that is that we can all work with. So I'm going to do a little bit of a historical retrospection. So we go before 1990. All councils from roughly 1965, all municipalities had bylaws until the National Building Regulations were published 1987 and then implemented roughly 1990. So with the bylaws, the councils took the responsibility of providing water on themselves, and it was done well, and there was never a problem. And so you could even feed a sprinkler system from the street main up to roughly the turn of the century in most cities. In Cape Town, there's still enough water and pressure in the street mains, and there are literally hundreds of sprinkler systems that are fed from the municipal supply. And so the landlords don't have to put up tanks and pumps in the better part of the greater Cape Town. But then, due to the differences between the bylaws and the sometimes confusing situation, of course, the National Building Regulations were promulgated. And so now the intent was that we now all have one set of regulations to work with. But even that proves to be almost impossible, as there are councils who cannot provide water. They can't supply water in the volumes that we need them for firefighting and at the pressures that we need them for firefighting. And so what's happening already is that the fire protection staff of the major brigades take their own decisions, and they make their own rules about water provision, and we could just as well have new sets of bylaws. If only they did give us bylaws, at least we would know what it is that they expect of us. But in some instances, they actually change from one day to the next. And so you would have an opinion from a fire officer today. You will do it, and by next week or next year, somebody else has taken that position and they've got a different opinion. And it's a different set of requirements, and it makes it really difficult to cater for their whims. Best I can call it is a whim. Okay, so here we're standing now in 2025, where at least, and I can speak here, at least in the metropolitan area of Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, the issues are kind of rife. So we have hose reels on the premises, we have hydrants, we have sprinkler systems that require water. Sprinkler system would operate somewhere between 10 bar and 12 bar, and you speak about 137 liters a minute roughly on an ordinary hazard system per head, and you can activate up to 19 or 20 heads at a time to cover the 260 square meters provision that's made in the design of the sprinkler system. So it's quite a lot of water that you require. In hydrants, the requirement in building regulations is 1,200 liters of water at 3 bar per hydrant. So if you flow 2 hydrants, which in most instances, the fire department will say that they require calculations to be done for 2 hydrants, you would require approximately 150,000 liters of water in a reservoir. So one hydrant would be 72,000 liters, two hydrants 150,000, and luckily I've never heard anybody asking for more than that, because it's water just sitting there in the tank. And in most instances, it must be a steel tank or a zinc tank. There is one city council where I have repeatedly worked with JoJo tanks, and sometimes the other brigades tell me that a JoJo tank will burn out, but it won't burn. Firstly, you don't have to put it against the building, number one. Number two, if it's filled with water, it cannot burn. We all know the little plastic bag in the fish experiment. But in Midvaal, it's possible to negotiate with the fire department so that you can, under certain circumstances, still use a JoJo tank. I have used JoJo tanks in other jurisdictions as well. So let me explain how I did it and why I've been able to do that. So let's assume for a moment that the landlord decides that they, in their risk appetite, that they need to have additional water for firefighting. So they didn't have the insurer coming around, they didn't have the fire department coming around. The landowner just says, the landlord says, I want more water and I want to be able to supply the fire department when they arrive. In that instance, I find that if you put up any kind of a tank, any kind of a reservoir, nobody will come after the fact and criticize them for this. In fact, they'll be too glad there's additional water. And I think it's under that assumption that I've been able to do it. And then once that's done and the insurer arrives there, the insurer is also too happy there's additional water. A steel tank, I'm going to talk about a steel tank because there are issues with the steel tanks. A steel tank can either be circular or it can be what's the right word now? Pressed steel panels built on dwarf walls, which is very expensive and so on. Now, if you take a tank, for instance, and I said I wasn't going to be technical, but I need to cover this just for a moment. If you take a tank with a diameter of 8 meters, a zinc tank, 8 meters and about 1.2 meters high, 1.3 meters high, you've got 72,000 liters of water. If you don't have a footprint for that, because that's large, 8 meters it's an enormous footprint. If you want to diminish the footprint, you can do it, but now you're raising the walls, and by raising the walls, you've also got to go for a thicker gauge zinc or steel, and that makes it really expensive. It almost doubles it if you diminish the radius or the diameter of the tank. So if you go down from 8 meters to say 4.5 meters, you've got to raise the sides of the tank, and you'll double the cost on the tank. So there's that. Now, if the requirement comes from the insurer, and this is why I say it's complicated. It's almost that we have to deal with every single situation ad hoc. If the insurer makes the requirement that they want additional water on the hydrants, and then by extension also on the hose rails, there's almost no way that you can get out of it. You've got to do it, because otherwise it's going to compromise or implicate the insurance on the building. So the insurer may require not only a reservoir but also a tank, a pump, and this is where it becomes so costly, because you've got to deliver water 1,200 liters a minute. I said at 3 bar. But to generate 3 bar, you at say the furthest point in the factory, you are probably going to have to generate at least 4 or 5 bar at the pump, depending on the distance that you are pumping and so on. And it's going to be an expensive pump in most instances. So let's go back to my first statement. If the landlord decides to put up the water reservoir and the pump, you could almost go for a sludge type pump, because you can easily deliver 1,500 liters a minute and easily at 4.5 bar. It's now your decision to add water in your premises, or the landlord's. But if the insurer is involved in it, the insurer will come and say that they need they'll call it a fire pump, and you've got to deliver diagrams and so on. And the calculations have to be properly done and so on. And now it becomes a little bit more technical. And if it's the fire department that wants it, they will make it a rational design. Now, we've talked about rational designs in the past, and I'm going to run past it again. I'll just touch on it so that we can, that we know how it slots in with water provision. So the regulation is clear. It's going to be 1,200 liters a minute at 3 bar. Okay, I've said it. So now we say, but there is no water in the municipal main. The council knows it, and the council says, but we want it, and you have got to provide it, and you've got to fit a pump. And mostly they will ask for the diesel pump on hydrants. And it's got to go into a pump house. In some instances, in smaller municipalities, you could get away without a pump by saying, I will put an outlet on the tank so that the fire brigade can come with an engine back up into that connection and draw water from the tank, which really should actually be it, even in the cities. But the cities just don't want to listen to that reasoning. They want a pump. And now it being, if you say that I can only deliver 1,000 liters a minute, then you are not complying with the regulation, and then you've got to go rational. And in most instances that I know of, even, the councils fall back on rational design, which means that an extra registered designer or fire engineer, I think they call them also that, must now do the calculation as if it's so difficult, but it must be that. And they must then present this rational design to the council. And now the challenge is that if the council considers a rational design on water provision, they will also look at the rest of the building. They will take the entire building or the entire complex, or if it's a mall, they will take it all into consideration. And now you've opened a can of worms, so to speak. So let's backtrack a little bit. If the landlord decides by themselves that I need to provide more water, you can do it far easier and far less complicated and with less serious consequences than what you would if you are put under pressure by the council. So it's something that you or your landlord or your client should foresee and take steps before the insurer or the council make their requirements. Once you've gotten a fire engineer and a rational design involved, the council now has a boot on your throat. Now you have to comply with what you have submitted. And so if I needed 150,000 liters of water, and I've got an earth dam or a pond, I can line it out and I can use that water. I can use water from a borehole if I have certification from a I would assume they call something in the region of aquaboral technician or engineer. I don't know what it's called. But the engineers that work with these water supplies and calculations from borehole. If you can feed a fire hydrant system 1,200 liters a minute at that pressure from a borehole, there should be no reason that it's not acceptable. In fact, NFPA 13, which is an American standard, which is a worldwide accepted standard by the insurers, NFPA 13 makes provision under certain circumstances that you can feed an NFPA 13 sprinkler system from a borehole. So you don't need tanks, you don't need additional pumps, and you don't need to give up the 16 parking bays that you need for sprinkler tanks, for instance. Okay, so we're still talking about hydrants, and I hope that I have cleared the air around those three options, or those three scenarios, in fact. Hose reels are hose reels. It's easy to satisfy the hose reel requirement. I'm not going to waste time on that. And then, of course, there's the issue of sprinklers. As I said, there are plenty sprinkler systems in Cape Town, in the Western Cape. They are fed directly from the street main. So I don't have to dwell on that. In the other cities or the other metros, we also still have systems that historically are fed from the main, but you obviously know that it doesn't comply with anything because the water supply is not guaranteed. So the council, if they turn down the water and there's no water in your domestic tap, it also means there's no water for the sprinkler system that's guaranteed. And so once you hear what I've said now, and you know that you've got a sprinkler system like that, it means you've got to do something about it. You can wait for the insurer and then have to comply with what the insurer says, or you can wait for the city council and do what they say, or you can get advice from a consultant or a fire engineer and see what the options are. And maybe you've got another source of water that you can use, that you don't have to build tanks. I know about a factory in Heidelberg. It's probably the largest factory of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere. They have some 24 ICVs, so it's a massive, massive, massive system. And they have a major pond lined out that they use as a water supply. And it was certified by NFPA as acceptable. And so there are options. The options are less than what you can do with a hydrant system, but there are options. And once you know that your system is fed directly from the municipal main, in any other metro other than the Western Cape, know for sure that you have a problem. And here's the challenge. You can keep quiet about it. You can let it be and say, well, we'll see what happens. Now, we attend, as fire ops, we attend to between 2 and 4 building fires daily, given fact. So if that's true, it means that no building, you're not guaranteed that you won't get a fire. And so knowing what you know now about the sprinkler system, if there's a fire in your building, whether the sprinkler system is activated or not activated, it doesn't really matter. The insurer will have a hold on that claim, and they will have a good right to refuse paying out the claim. I'm not advocating on their behalf. I'm just stating fact, obviously. And so I would suggest that the listener would always consider getting advice well ahead of time. It's far better to get advice and then to maybe phase whatever is recommended, phase it in if the capital expense is too high, or Make some kind of another plan so that you are ahead of the insurer. That's really the point that I'm wanting to make here. So that when the insurer sends an assessor around to do an assessment of your property, you have got a positive contribution that you can already have recorded. And I'd rather have you do that than to be caught unawares. And it'll make your case so much stronger. I can assure you now that the insurers for the past, since the KZN fires were in July of 21 or 22, and since then the insurers are almost eager, almost zealous to take fire off a policy if it seems like the risk is too great for them. And so being proactive is definitely of great value. I trust I've given you enough information for thought, and I'll take questions now. Can I take questions now?
Yes.
I'll probably need my binoculars.
There's no questions there.
No questions.
No questions.
Well, that means that I made a near perfect presentation. I'm happy that I've improved so much. Because with the last presentation, we still had questions.
Nothing there.
No questions. Can I ask any one of the attendees, just confirm that you've heard me throughout for the full chat? Still nobody.
They can hear us.
They can hear us, okay.
Debates online. Can you...
All right. Yeah, the situation is dire. David says they can hear. Thank you, David. The situation is dire. The councils definitely are almost hunting on the subject. Nobody's going to get away with it. Now consider a high-rise building, for instance. If you don't have water on the 17th floor, if there's a fire because of a poor municipal feed, how do we expect that the firefighters will fight that fire? Running up a stairwell 17 stories, they have to have a serious pump, the bottom end, to feed their own lines if they want to do that. If they want to boost a high-rise building riser system, they must have serious major pumps, fire engines on the scene to boost that. Now, I'm not even talking about the buildings where the risers are cut out and sold for scrap metal. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a system that's already in the building but it doesn't have water. Okay, we've had confirmation now from 3 people that you've heard it all. I'm going to make a last statement about high-rise buildings. I have assessed a few buildings in the last few months, high-rise buildings, where the building, the placement of the building, the position of the building is of such a nature they won't even be able to get a crane in there to put extra tanks on the roof. But there are alternatives for that as well, to get water on the top of a high-rise building. And if anybody approaches me for advice, I will visit such a building and I will then give advice on that. I don't want to give advice in a webinar, not that kind of advice. It may put our company in a bad position. Okay, it looks like we've had a webinar with enough insight so that everybody understood the subject, and I trust that we will hear from you if you need more information. Next webinar is on the 28th of January, and what's my subject there? Engineering solutions to national building regulation challenges versus the traditional fire plan. Oh, it's a long topic. I'll see what I can do about that. So you are all invited, and forward it to your friends, forward it to other companies, the link. So we've really got a good attendance today. I'm really surprised, and I'm happy for that. Here just before the holiday season. So may all have a lovely day and a lovely rest of the week. And we'll see you at the next webinar.